Just 4 days ago, we had the perfect family beach day. It was warm but not too hot. Everyone saw at least one sea turtle while snorkeling. The kids worked together to dig an epic hole in the sand. They enjoyed each other and didn't fight or whine. As we were getting ready to leave, the woman we were sitting next to told me how much she'd enjoyed sharing space with us and complimented my well-behaved children who got along so well. I fumbled the compliment a bit with the old, "I don't know how much we have to do with it. We got pretty lucky to get such good kids." She insisted that it was more than that. She has children of her own and could tell good parenting was afoot. It was a lovely and sincere compliment, but it was also very easy to be a good parent on an idyllic day like that. I couldn't help but think about the reverse scenario, which we had experienced plenty of times that week. Sometimes my kids are just mean to each other for no reason. They hurt each other with words, with fists, with teeth. I've had moments of hopelessness, thinking that my only choice was to ship a couple of them off to my parents, who could do a much better job than I could. What if that woman had witnessed one of those days instead? If I take credit for my angelic kids on an extraordinary day, do I have to take the blame for the bad days? For every beautiful seashell in the big bag of motherhood, there's a sandy grape or two. All of this opens up the age-old paradox of motherhood, nature or nurture. How much impact do we even have as mothers? How much of a child's behavior has to do with our parenting and how much is just who they are? There are plenty of examples of good parents with children who go off the rails, and vice versa, people with horrific childhoods who go on to become terrifically resilient, remarkable people. I know that woman didn't intend for her compliment to send me down an existential rabbit hole. She saw a good mom trying hard and she acknowledged it. It felt good to be seen, and we should pay each other compliments more often. But we also need to be careful not to judge moms whose kids are misbehaving or struggling, even if they don't handle the situation perfectly. We're all part of a grand experiment, sometimes getting it right, other times really messing up. All we can do is keep doing our best and savoring those great moments and learning from the not-so-great ones. This is the How She Moms podcast with Whitney Archibald. I'm a mother of 5 on a mission to help moms connect with your kids, manage your homes, and create your own unique version of motherhood. I curate ideas from different moms so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. It's that time again. About 3 times a year, I do a whole episode updating you on the experiments we're trying here in the Archibald home, from sleep to chores to allowance to travel. But before I get into the episode, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Smart for Life. When I was a busy teenager, I remember wishing there was a magic pill I could take to replace a meal on those days I just didn't have time to sit down and eat. Luckily, by the time I became a busy mom, protein bars were invented for those times when you just have to eat on the go. Now that I'm well into motherhood, bars have come a long way. I've tried them all, and I'm so happy to have discovered a new go-to bar, Smart for Life. My 15-year-old son and I were searching for a bar that was filling, gluten-free, uses ingredients we can pronounce, and most importantly, was not loaded with sugar. He eats his as a pick-me-up after workouts, and I usually end up eating one to replace either breakfast or lunch while I'm out and about, or when I just realize I forgot to eat, as moms often do. Smart for Life also sells cookies, shakes, soups, and other products. If you'd like to give them a try, head to smartforlife.com and use the code HowSheMoms with no spaces to get a 10% discount off your order. I'll start with an update on our allowance system. This is the longest we've ever stuck with one money system, ever. Over a year ago, we switched from paying our kids per chore to giving the kids a monthly and weekly allowance, depending on their age. It just seems to be the best fit for our family, partly because I hate the logistics of keeping track of paying them for each chore they do. They each still have to do chores, but now if they don't do them, they have to pay somebody else, usually me, to do them. I've been working extra hard to enforce this lately, to teach them that being part of a family and being a person in general requires a certain amount of work, and it has to get done one way or another. If you're not going to do your work, you're still responsible for getting it done, even if it means outsourcing it to somebody else. Mom isn't just going to pick up the slack, at least not for free. I still pay them for extra chores, which they sometimes do when they need some extra cash. And by cash, I don't really mean cash because I rarely keep it on hand. I've mentioned this before, but we use the Bankaroo app to keep track of their money. The main reason we decided to give allowance was to give the kids experience with managing money, and this is where we're starting to see a payoff now that we've been consistent for so long. Our oldest son especially has started taking really good care of his clothes and other purchases because he bought them himself and he knows how expensive it is to replace them. The best part was Christmas time, when, with no prompting from us, all of our kids were so generous in buying really thoughtful gifts for each other. Since we're talking about Christmas, our gifts this year were another of my favorite experiments. We decided that our gifts to our kids this year would be redoing their bedrooms. We started by painting them in late November, which was an experiment unto itself. All the kids wanted to help, so I let them help with the yellow room, the lightest color. It was pretty interesting to see which kids actually had the patience to help and do a careful job, and which ones left splotches on the ceiling when I wasn't watching. And of course, which ones stepped right into the paint tray. This was by far the messiest experiment and of course added a lot of time, but they all learned from it, including me, and somehow I got all the mess cleaned up. We had two main objectives for redoing these rooms. The first objective was to create rooms that helped them develop their talents. We made a great space for our oldest son's guitars and amps in his room, and he added a record player, so it's a great place to make and listen to music. He actually shares a bunk bed with our youngest son, who's soaking up all the music as well. We turned my daughter's room into an art studio, with clotheslines to hang her creations. We made more creative spaces in our other son's room as well, but lately it's mostly turned into a greenhouse. He wanted a bunch of plants for his birthday, and he's really good at taking care of them, and he's developing a real interest in gardening. The last bedroom in the basement was already new, so that son requested that we furnish his room with more books. That didn't take much persuasion. We also got him a nice camera to help him develop that talent. Our other objective for changing our kids' rooms was to help them with the perennial problem of bedtime. We thought that maybe if we made their rooms places they loved to be, it would help them go to bed and stay in bed. And another main tactic was getting tall beds for the two kids who are most notorious for getting out of bed. We bought a bunk bed for one room and a loft bed for another, and it's really worked. Just that little bit of effort getting in and out of bed has made a difference. Plus, they've made cozy little nests up there that they like to snuggle into. In fact, it's worked so well that our third son has stopped hanging out with the older boys downstairs at bedtime for what we call teen time because he prefers to spend time in his room winding down at the end of the day. He has always struggled with getting to sleep, and his new routine is really helping. Teen time itself has been going for close to a year now, and honestly, it's kind of performed a miracle. For a while, I had just resigned myself to the fact that my two oldest boys were not going to ever be good friends. Who knew that TV would bring them together? Having their own shows that they watch together with their own inside jokes and just the fact that they spend an hour or two together every night has done wonders for their relationship. Or maybe it's just that they're older and more mature, I don't know. But it's my favorite new thing. They actually love being together. Another thing we've been experimenting with to help bedtime, at least on the nights when we can get our act together, is incorporating the Danish concept of hygge. We've been dimming the lights during and after dinner and even lighting candles sometimes. It's really helped us to calm down, work together to clean up, which is also a part of hygge, and then spend some family time in front of the fire before bed. We started this after I listened to a fabulous episode of the Family Looking Up podcast where they interviewed Jessica Joelle Alexander, one of the co-authors of the book The Danish Way of Parenting, What the Happiest People in the World Know About Raising Confident, Capable Kids. It's episode 164 if you want to go back and listen to it. I had heard of hygge before and thought it was a nice, cozy concept, but the way Jessica described it just clicked for me. She thinks of hygge as a state of group mindfulness, what she calls we-fulness. I immediately bought the book after listening and loved it. Several of the refreshingly simple concepts are already part of my parenting style, like reframing things positively. I've always been a Pollyanna, but one of the concepts I'm really working on is getting rid of ultimatums. This book came at a perfect time for me. I had just noticed how transactional my parenting had become. If you do this, I'll do this. And the reason I noticed it is because my 5-year-old started wheeling and dealing about everything. I'll brush my teeth if you read me an extra story. I'll take my plate over if you give me a treat. This helped me realize just how much I had been doing this, both positively with rewards and negatively with ultimatums. Ever since, I've been really working on avoiding ultimatums and power struggles and noticing when I do use them. Jessica even recommends that we write down the ultimatums we use so we're more aware of them. This has also helped me realize one of the main sources of power struggles with one son in particular, one I should have noticed far earlier because it's one of those situations where we're so alike that we drive each other crazy. No one likes to be micromanaged, but for this son and for myself, micromanagement is one of our main triggers. Once I finally started to see that he's like me in this, I've been backing off a lot more and letting him be in charge of more things. To help with this, I created a new chart for my kids, really more like an evaluation form. I wrote down the main things each of them is responsible for, or will be eventually, like keeping their bedroom and bathroom clean, doing their laundry, kitchen chore, and their other chores. And I let them evaluate whether they are a manager, somebody who's competent and in charge of when and how they do the job, a worker doing their job with help, reminders, and or supervision from me, or a helper where I actually do the job and they just help me. I had them go down the list and evaluate where they were for each item, and we talked about how to get to the next level. I encouraged them to all pick one area where they could level up. We revisit it once in a while to check their progress. The best part of it is that they can see the end goal as being in charge without me having to nag or remind them to do things. Freedom for all of us. Most of them have at least one area in which they are the manager, so they can see how much better it is to get to that level. It's been especially great for that particular son who doesn't even follow the same chore schedule as the rest of us anymore. He created his own timetable and he consistently gets everything done. He still has some areas to work on, but he has caught the vision. I'm so proud of him, and we have much fewer power struggles. Another big experiment has been with physical activity. With so many things canceled this year, only one of my kids did any fall sports. And even then it was limited. And of course, winter always naturally limits our physical activity. We haven't even been skiing very much this winter. So when my oldest son's tennis coach offered 3 weeks of personal training this January, we jumped at the chance. For anyone in the Denver-Castle Rock area, I highly recommend doing one of these 3-week training sessions, or any tennis or training program with Ben Wolf. You can find him at benwolftennisandfitness.com. It's not just for tennis players. Ben did a phenomenal job personalizing workouts and encouraging Jonas and holding him accountable. Anyway, once he started his daily workouts, it was contagious. We bought some simple equipment like jump ropes, bands, a medicine ball, and some weights, and everyone, including me, has started using them and joining Jonas in his workouts. It's been so great for both our physical and mental health. Since I opened with a scene from our spring break trip, I'll end by talking about some of our travel experiments. We wanted to do something exciting for spring break after such a tough year, and we had lots of airline miles to burn after a year of no flying, so we booked a trip to Maui for spring break, first time to Hawaii for any of our kids. Traveling with 5 kids is always an experiment, but this time it felt like we've finally arrived. The kids now range from 15 to 5. Everyone can carry or wheel around their own bags. Navigating the airport was pretty amazing, and everyone can pretty much entertain themselves and each other on the flight. I actually got to read on a plane. Perhaps my riskiest experiment when we travel now is that everyone except our 5-year-old is completely in charge of packing themselves. They've all reached manager status in that area. I print out a packing list and they use it, or not. This trip they did pretty well. All we had to buy there were a couple of rash guards. Another thing we're always experimenting with when we travel with our kids is having a flexible agenda and accommodating other people's priorities. This is hard for some of the kids who want to know exactly what we're going to do and when. But at the beginning of our trip, we just had a big discussion about everyone's main priorities, made a list of must-dos, and then based our daily plans on the weather, what we felt like doing, and fitting in the priorities from the list. We also roughly tried to alternate adventurous days with lazy beach days. Early in the trip, we experimented with a rainforest hike that was close by to determine whether we wanted to take the much more ambitious trip on the road to Hana. We're so glad we tried it first. Some kids loved the mud, the rain, and the adventure. Others, not so much. There was also significant quarreling, but only in the car. We decided that the close hike would suffice and skipped the longer road trip. I love all the things that family vacations teach the kids, to be flexible, to adapt, and to come up with a plan B if it rains or something else doesn't go as planned. To recognize that not everyone wants to do what you want to do and to accommodate other people's priorities. Vacations are also another great way to teach them about money. We make them use their own money to buy souvenirs, so it was interesting to see how they weighed their options and determined how to spend their money. It was also good for my habitual spenders to see how many more options the kids who like to save had. One of the highlights for all of us was using the Gypsy Guide for Maui, an app that works with GPS to trigger location-based commentary as you drive, from history to geography to geology and culture. I love to learn as much as possible about the places we travel, and we're totally addicted to these Gypsy Guides. We've used them in 4 national parks, Yellowstone, Grand Tetons, Canyonlands, and Arches as well, and we're excited to use it in Rocky Mountain National Park and maybe some of the southern Utah parks this summer. There are guides for all the Hawaiian Islands and national parks all over the U.S., Canada, and Australia. You'll love them. I also love reading books about the places I'm visiting while I'm there. It was pretty amazing to read the book Molokai while sitting on a beach looking at that island. Such a great book. We ended up having a fabulous trip with lots of great days at different beaches, a trip to the top of a volcano, and several adventurous hikes. Now that I've kind of updated you on what's going on around here, I'd love to hear about some of your experiments. You can email me at whitney@howshemoms.com to tell me some of the things you're trying with your own families these days. I'd love to incorporate your great ideas into future episodes and Instagram posts, and of course try some of them myself. I'm always looking for ideas to try in this grand experiment called motherhood. Thank you for listening to the How She Moms podcast. If you like it, tell a friend. The bigger the community, the more ideas. There are lots of ways you can add your ideas to the How She Moms community. We have a Facebook group where we share ideas about upcoming topics and help each other solve problems we're facing in motherhood. You can also follow How She Moms on Instagram for quick tips and ideas. And you can go to howshemoms.com where you'll find transcripts of episodes and lots of other great resources. Special thanks to my mom, Susan Singley, for recording my theme music. She played this song all the time when I was growing up, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.